Good morning, good evening, or night, depending when you're watching this video. My name is a legend, and welcome to 2026, and goodbye to 2025. My god, what a year it was once again. We got World of Tanks 2.0, more major things happening in my life, and YouTube. Well, YouTube not so much. But let's talk in more detail what happened the past year, how I'm feeling about those things right now, and what my perspective is into the future new year. So with a 10-day deadline for probably another 1 hour plus video and me having a sore throat at the moment, let's just dive straight into it. So next to World of Tanks 2.0, which will contain most of the content checkups, I have also shared my concern about the most dominant form of new content throughout loot boxes, auctions and assembly shops. Now this got counteracted by the contents of what 2.0, despite lacking in some departments and being way too late and quite a poor excuse to delay many of those new elements. Also the new Onslaught tank, a reskin 60 TP. I don't have that one yet, so that's another goal to achieve, and in the meantime I take up the new personal campaign mission and maybe even finishing up and achieving the 279E from previous campaign missions. So it seems that it's going better with the game, but how does it fare when grading the predicted features I took from the 2025 teaser video? Again, grading it from failed to pass or not done. Personal campaign 3 passed. The long awaited third personal campaign is excellently implemented. I think the tank requirements, being the 3 branches of separate tank subtypes or tank roles, are great. That gives enough variation to the mission requirements so that you are not forced, for example, to play artillery, or for the most missions. The progression is good. The only thing is that you cannot continue further if you cannot complete the current mission in a branch. So if you get a lot of points quick, you have to be lucky not to stumble upon a mission that might be very hard for you to achieve early on. But it gets highly compensated by the alternative progression throughout daily and weekly missions. That way, every player can get all tanks eventually by just playing and achieving at least the easiest daily missions. And it has also been balanced to the degree that skipping campaign missions and only doing daily and weekly missions will take an enormous amount of time than if you would try for the campaign missions themselves. The reward seems great again, and all still quite unique enough to be wanted, and all seemingly quite good in performance. Especially the drawback for competitive play, which is a bit of a downside, since that one is a bit expected to have, at least with the higher competitive clans, with the following maneuver event. And also the Black Rock being one of the better tier 11s is still something that, well, feels a bit debatable. I still hope that they are not too dominant in the current meta, at least in the random battles, but since they are achievable by practically everyone, getting a high performance tank only if you have high skill gets a bit toned down. So generally, I think this is the best personal campaign out of all 3 of them. Relatively long progression, but always achievable with a myriad of options of tanks, which at least some of them are in your garage. Even the reward tanks are comparatively less strong than, well, of course, the 260 when it first got released. and especially the 279E, which were also quite overpowered tanks, so the Dravek isn't really that level, but it's still quite good. The big rebalance. Neutral. In 2.0, the big rebalance gave us better stock configuration, light tank HP increase, although only slightly, old premium tank buffs, and general high tier buffs to compete against the newly added tier 11s. All great rebalances. Although I'm not grinding as much anymore, having better stock configuration is one of the best choices for gameplay experience improvements. Light tank HP will mean more leeway for slight mistakes, with me mostly due to bush Mahonix, basically inconsistent bush camo mechanics. Some old power crept premiums getting buffed was definitely necessary, and buffs so that tier 10 can just slightly better face up against the tier 11s. Now tier 11 has been more complicated in the matter. Right out of the box they are basically tier 10 to tier 10 and a half. And the general difference between the tier 10s and the tier 11s isn't that significantly, but still another great choice to make. However, on the flip side, throughout the year, already starting early in 2025, we got some worrisome armor balances for the E100, Yo-Tank and the Type 71. This trend I already called out in my 12th anniversary video continued in 2.0 with the Type 5 heavy armor buffs. Even though so far I haven't noticed that those tanks were made so much stronger that they dominate regular and competitive battlefields, like they used to a long time ago. I did found that I have far more difficulty dealing with those tanks, since most of the maps have a lot of hull down positions and corridors in which it's frustratingly hard to encounter and brawl against those vehicles. It just limits gameplay and forces me to just wait and see if they either move away or more of my team moves up or flank around. It makes the game more boring and annoying. Also some other tanks like the VZ55, which I feel didn't need any buffs, but also didn't notice a surge in performance of those tanks. Finally, even though the light HP buff is fine, I like it, but why not concealment to make tanks like the Manticore and the ELC even 90 less dominant on that regard? Yeah, it's more balanced towards other tank types, but within the light tank type itself, it's still quite messy. So the great balances I started off with are quite balanced out by the negative buffs, which make the game more stale or misses the mark or misses some potential. Random events semi-passed. Generally, all new random events will in theory increase the amount of opportunities to either flank, advance or break stalemates. So in the perspective of design, it gets a full pass. However, in practice, it's just slightly lacking in some fronts. Yes, the trains in ends give you the choice to advance, but nobody does that because the cover is only temporarily, and by the time you get to permanent cover you will be in a disadvantageous position in which you are more vulnerable for enemy countermeasures. And yes, the blimp in Redshire gives you more opportunities for close quarters engagement on that side of the map, but when you can progress further, you still find the same problem with camping tanks across an open area. But at least it all gives some variation and improves gameplay in some degree for most of them, making it a net positive improvement. Tight 3D model equipment. Not done. I have said that this one was by far my most far-fetched idea or interpretation, but it would have been interesting to visibly see the different equipment pieces that you can run as 3D models on your tank. Now, this idea, which I got from the tank exterior parts fragments from the teaser video, is more likely to be related to the tier 11s with their new abilities. In the meantime, we did got more 3D attachments available for more tanks, so that is some steady progression, but not one I feel too great. New tech tree / nation semi-passed. We got no new nation unfortunately, and just one new tech tree this entire year, the British double barrel tanks. These are not great. Maybe good to play, but frustrating to fight against. A lot of frontal armor, barely any weak spots, just using the single shot, and you basically have a better super conqueror. So yeah, I am not a huge fan of those. Now, we still got 15 new tier 11 tech tree tanks, which is more than even 2 new tech trees combined. But with the amount of new content of tanks, there could easily be another tech tree. Like, where are the high alpha Czech tank destroyer tech tree? Where are the Japanese double barrel tank destroyer tech tree? Both of those archetypes have been in development and partially released already. And with update 2.0, I really missed a new nation. That would really elevated the update. Now you just got more extensions. They got new gimmicks with abilities, but those feel like a more easy cop out, especially since many of those tier 11s look like AI generated tanks. However, new content is new content, so in this regard it gets barely past. New garage, neutral. So we at least got a new garage, which looks quite cool and is a step up from the old forest that we had since update 1.0 and look more expanded than the pre 1.0 garage. I do miss the feeling that the entire complex makes up the World of Tanks logo that we see. Like, why not have the load screen being a bird's eye view of the complex, which is the logo of the game? And when you get fully loaded in, you zoom in live into the garage towards the spot of your tank displays. Also, if you switch to other settings, just like the armor view or the exterior view, you just teleport now. Why not pan the camera to different parts of the garage, specifically designed for these particular settings? Next to the missed opportunities, we got some UI changes that are a mixed bag. Some of them are very handy after getting slightly used to, and improvements are already made after initial feedback. But simplifying stuff so you don't instantly see your stats, for example, is going a bit far. Also, other things that were more easily accessible are now harder to find. So generally a good change, but not every element completed or well implemented. So I am also on the middle on this one. So those were the points I got from that video. So far so good, right? No major fails, only a few missed out things. One more pressing than the other. But some other new features I quickly wanted to grade as well. Battle rating. Neutral, good implementation, but I haven't seen anything of it. I forget it quite a lot. So maybe make it pop up more and let us know what happens with that feedback. Tier 11s, semi-passed. It's new content, it could be better. Abilities seems mostly balanced enough. Tanks are mostly balanced enough around the fact that the tier 10s got buffed and they need a lot of additional experience to reach their top configuration. Longevity wise, it is an easier way to add new tech tree tanks to the game at a more end game level. Otherwise, you need some more filler tanks at the mid tiers. New matchmaker, semi-passed, also could be better with including player stats into the matchmaking, but with more tank variation, more limited tank destroyer and light tanks and less +2 -2, it's definitely an improvement with maybe more potential in the future. New map, semi failed. I haven't seen the new map that much. It seems okay-ish, but it has a lot of long range ambush positions for tank destroyers. But on the other hand, there are more interesting sub-flanks within the launch platform and the hangars. The main fail is pretty much the lack of more maps. There could easily be at least 3 new maps introduced with 2.0, but well, apparently not. Armor flashlight, neutral. Now, I've been highly critical towards this feature, but I think the price slash payoff seems valuable enough to be acceptable. You need to aim for a bit at the target to activate the flashlight, and then the weak spots are most of the time still pixel shots. So against the newer hull down tanks, I don't find it much as an issue actually, making it easier to find and hit those weak spots. But eventually I still think it wasn't necessary, but I do see the positive in some scenarios, and I am using it, of course, to get an advantage out of it. So most of these points got on the best side. The update 2.0 did give a lot of upsides, but could have done more to make it an excellent year for World of Tanks development. If you would compare the 2.0 to the Russian Alpha update, you notice how much more they did in terms of new content for direct gameplay, mostly maps. Other content creators also noticed that prior to the 2.0 update, very little changes were made, probably being saved to fit within that big of an update. But that made World of Tanks also freeze a bit with new content which was pivoted predominantly towards the loot boxes, auctions and assembly shops, which I mentioned before. But at least the percentage of free-to-play high-tier tanks got increased quite a bit with the introduction of the 16 new tier 11 tanks and the other 2 tanks from the personal campaign. The 2.0 update should have really focused on the big brand new changes, directing more attention to depth into the new garage, new tier 11s and subsequently more new maps, and all announced map changes which could have been the new biggest thing to diversify the game. Smaller things like armor flashlight, matchmaking, battle rating and random events are pretty much sub-updates that could have been distributed earlier in the year. Instead, it is filler for a not so grand 2.0 update, but at least it was something. Even though I think I've already talked quite a bit about how World of Tanks fared in 2025, I think I have even more to tell about my life, which interests pretty much nobody, but I do need to address what I regard as my proudest accomplishment in my life so far. However, we will be building up to that. Starting off, not much has changed this year on my hobbies. Most attention to World of Tanks dipped in the summer, which I talked about why in my 12th anniversary video, but it got back up again with the 2.0 and holiday ops. Outside of what, I haven't spent that much time on other games as of late, but more time went to other things in real life. So over the summer I got a bit out of my comfort zone and went on a group trip throughout Central Europe by train. I didn't know any of the other travelers. Most of them are from Belgium, which for me, being a minority between Dutch and Belgians in a group, hasn't been something I experienced that much before, at least in real life. Like online, sometimes in the clan, the group on the Discord might contain more Belgians, but not that many times. We went to the Czech Republic and Slovakia, visiting both capital cities Prague and Bratislava, alongside some rural visits to the Czech wine region south of Brno and the Slovakian Tatra mountain region. Was the land of Pils beer and high quality vineyards. I drank an approximately 20 liters of beer and wine in 10 days and somehow didn't suffer any hangovers. I even got into a beer spa in Prague. So I highly recommend these places to visit. The only thing I to have done differently was a more luxurious cabin in the night train instead of the 4 square meters we got for 6 persons. I was unfortunately unable to see my fellow travelers again at the reunion, which was planned just 1 month after the trip, but I would really like to catch up with them at least once. So this year I started to really intermingle with company-wide developments that would influence workflows on multiple departments. It was now so apparent that I have shifted away from my original job title as designer or drawer of traffic measurements to advisor developer, which I still don't fully understand what the job title actually inclines. Over the entire year, I spent navigating to develop an acceptable automation for product counting. However, by doing that, I discovered that on many fronts, the different departments and different locations, we have different work methods with no general automated process that can easily be introduced, because for the one department at one location it might be acceptable, but for the others it won't work, or vice versa. This really got frustrating since the automatization has already been enforced but not fully utilized, which leaves the designing department irritated because they are doing some extra tasks which the benefits don't get used by the other departments. This eventually led to an idea mentioned by the general director, giving me the idea to work out a new form of meetings with flexible teams of multiple departments, also alongside representatives of all locations will get a seat in, judge and evaluate the new ideas and developments which will have an impact company wide. It has been put out of my hands some more, being considered a management of change format which falls under the quality working conditions and environment department, or well, we call it CAM. Apparently it is QWE in English. Which is the department focusing on safety processes. I wasn't really mad about it being taken out of my hands, because in the meantime I had several webinars and seminars to attend and document new development ideas, doing quality checks on traffic measurement drawings, having communication with a third party which would replace one of our old AutoCAD plugins and would be more cooperative with further developments which we still need to brainstorm about. Did several requests from designing spatial furnishing of branch locations to mapping out the areas each location covered. Working 3 new colleagues with several trainings and helping on updating the general work manual for the designing department, including updating all work instructions by myself on top of all of those things I already was doing with counting, automation, reporting, which I also made several templates for, the AutoCAD tool palette and template for AutoCAD drawings and the original drawing and designing of traffic measurements myself, which I sometimes needed to do or wanted to do in order to make further developments and the work processes correctly. Yeah, I got a bit busy. Eventually, I needed to make a full-on Gantt chart in order to organize all of my tasks, but I still got 4 other file locations where I put separate requests, projects, or remarks, which I translated into further tasks or actions to take. However, for all that extra work, task, and pretty much rearrangement of like prioritization of tasks and all the actions I have, my pay raise was standard. Yeah, the standard pay raise everyone got. So yeah, this was also the year I tried to work less. Really trying to work the hours equal to the amount that I was getting paid for, which translated into around working 8 hours less each month. So maybe it was for the better I got a large break from work nearing the end of the year. Think my career was starting to be a bit chaotic? Well, can't leave it at that, because why not also have a chaotic year with both friends and family? It started off very positively with me being witness on one official wedding ceremony and later in the same month attending another wedding party. One of those friend couples was also already expecting a baby later in that year in September. Unfortunately, shortly after the wedding, they got to know that the fetus had many disabilities in the brain and decided to terminate the pregnancy in order to save the baby from a life filled with mental suffering. It was too big of a risk that this child would have been on the highest level of autism with regular epileptic attacks and seizures. I talked about it a bit more in my previous update video on how hard of a choice that was, and I still find it quite the heavy topic, so I leave it at that. Then later this year, on the flip side, they got pregnant again, which I saw as a huge relief that they didn't abandon the idea in its entirety. They have taken the pregnancy with a lot more grains of salt and are very conservative with celebrations. Also, mentally, it's a tough event to go through, especially for the soon to be mother in this couple. But luckily, all the scans indicated a healthy baby, and during the same time they got the news of that something is wrong, they now got pretty much the green light to continue. So let's hope this prosperity continues from now on forwards. Then on the family side, which also has a lot to do with my personal health this time, I can announce my proudest accomplishment. On the 11th of November, my kidney got successfully transplanted to my mother and immediately improved her kidney functionality back to, well, not only the expected functionality, but even far beyond that. Because my kidney is actually way too strong for her for her body. Normally, it's like having a V12 in a small hatchback car, pretty much. After almost 1 year of dialysis, which already began and took a toll on her physically, it is finally done. My recovery from a kidney taken away went as well as it could. I already was able to leave the hospital in several days, and after a week on more watchful eyes of my father and little brother, I went back to my own apartment, which I confidently could recover with no work related responsibilities. Only asking my friends to come over in the weekends and help out with the groceries and some cleaning. My mother's recovery was more troublesome, which again is a bit of a heartbreak. But now she is luckily at home, even though she's still suffering from a virus she got in the hospital. I, of course, got a lot of admiration for this matter, and I am definitely proud of. I mean, when I was at the hospital, I had a view on my old college, and I honestly thought I am more proud what I've accomplished here, being here for 4.5 days, than all of the things I've accomplished there in 4.5 years. I would trade my diploma in a heartbeat if it were to benefit my mother's health. Also, another surreal feeling was the first night outside the hospital back at my parents' home. I was advised to sleep in my parents' bedroom since my bedroom was another flight of stairs away and not that close to the toilet, which was still a bit of a tricky situation at the time. But when I installed there was still the dialysis machine which he needed to use every night. And I felt like I replaced you. You are not needed in this room anymore. My kidney at least, my kidney got this now. I went, well, pretty sober in the process and, well, went also pretty sober out of it. Because I think this is the video where I will gloat most about it. I know what responses I get when I mention it to others for the first time, and it, of course, fills me up with a lot of pride. It's still very weird, but I'm more excited to see more recovery and for the first time in years, stable recovery with my mother, with hopefully no further unwanted complications anymore. It is done now. She got good lungs, she has a strong heart, sometimes a little bit of the beat, not that extreme anymore, and now she got functioning kidneys. Just no reason for any other organs to malfunction for at least 10 years. Because she deserves a decent life, which already got shortened after all the shit that has happened. And it just, well, when I talk about it or receive all the compliments about this matter, well, I can respond with, well, the statement always brought me, which always made me a bit more emotional. Because when they say that, I respond just that I'm so grateful that this was an opportunity that I could do, that I could actually help and not stand by the sidelines for 6.5 years, pretty much. Gewoon not able to do anything about it is, yeah, seeing your mother wither away like that. I finally could help. That feeling is still got me. I have no words for it. It's a feeling that I probably could not reach anymore. Like, sure, I still young and still a lot of things to do in life, but this is one of the things I really want to live for. Doing things for the people I love. Being able to do it after such a long time of feeling powerless, pretty much. Going from the big talks to the really small talks, am I right? Yeah, another decrease in content output with only 18 videos uploaded this year, almost half as less as previous year. Could be more, but with the internet issues and the kidney transplantation, it was significantly harder to do. Looking back at a few videos that are notable, of course, the music mashup did well again. The first look back ad for the Operation Overlord that reached a decent amount of views, and another clickbait title that did the best this year. I mean, it wasn't really clickbait. I mean, there's no hot woman in the thumbnail. It's just a recognizable meme. Well, it seems just as bad as the one of previous year if I would review the loyalty statistics with 60% dropping off after half a minute of watching. This time it really wasn't that intentional for that reason. Also notable was the amount of non-gameplay related videos. 11 out of 18 being either update videos, look back ads or special videos not covering gameplay. That went from 25 to 30% pre 2025 to over 60% in 2025. Interesting development, especially since I actually recorded even more reaction videos to the 2.0 update, but I think I've explained them well enough here not to upload those additional, now outdated statements as well. But yeah, less YouTube with less gameplay focused material this past year. The present. So okay, we got tier 10 premiums now in the well, I mean we got tier 10 rewards now in the standard loot boxes. At least there aren't tiered loot boxes. Just hoping those tier 10s stay out of the high competitive meta as well as the other tier 8s. Just one tier 8 in the boxes now. Okay. There's still enough to do in World of Tanks, so I have purchased still some boxes to harness 1 gold and premium time for the upcoming months. After it's only again the question if Wargaming is going to let us down hard enough again for me to lose interest. And for these boxes, I only buy these holiday boxes since the things you can get out of it is actually worth the money in the regard how much digital gold is worth. Well, okay. I feel World of Tanks is for now in an okay-ish state, but very vulnerable with the whole increase of the top tier to tier 11 and the grids you need to do for that, in combination with the still high difference between casual players and competitive players throughout the myriad of crew skills, special equipment, field mods or upgrades and consumables is going to make World of Tanks more mixed than ever before. Casual or new players will have more and more trouble dealing with players who are highly skilled or competitive, or players who spend a lot of money to have the best builds for their tank, even though new players can receive and gain content never as easier as right now. But introducing more new players at the end game tiers are pretty much making the turbo battles an ongoing problem. Several years ago, I concluded to set my mentality in neutral to deal with all kinds of bullshit, not thinking too positively to avoid disappointment and not too negatively to avoid depression. Now it's coming more towards setting my emotions in neutral and save them for situations that actually matter. So, on my scale of life priorities, hobbies like World of Tanks do not deserve as much emotion as I sometimes exert into it. I've tried it before, not raging in World of Tanks, but when I might inevitably do, I should reflect on it and try to figure out where it comes from and how to deal with it in a more healthier way in order to, well, like I said before, save those emotions for other things. Going up the list for connections and careers, some degree of emotional involvement should be evident with my work, especially setting my boundaries and protecting those, getting more resolve whenever I get pushback on either the amount I want to get paid or the amount of projects that I do, but of course not too much. Leaving most emotion for my friends and family, in which I can express mostly positive ones. When shit gets hard, revert to the most stoic, neutral mentality that has to be expected from a man. But when something does happen, instead of just the prospect of something happening, either positively or negatively, finding the moments to have space for an emotional outlet is still important. And for my personal health, having that neutral mentality really helps me in a lot of ways. Just whenever it really comes to personal well-being, I need the most investment and use most of my emotional strength on it. And that means not getting over emotional about not having internet connection, but really getting involved whenever things like, well, water or food are at stake, more life-threatening elements. With the recent letter from the government stating that I need to prepare and plan whenever a power outage of 72 hours is going to happen, might me do something more action if indeed it is needed at that point. Because so far, of course, we live crisis to crisis. The media and the government has called out wolf so many times that, I really need to experience it to believe it at this moment. YouTube right now feels again as a low priority. I did had in fact more time to spend on videos, but still wasn't able to update or upload that much. Mostly because the last few videos are also quite lengthy, as also this one, which I see is going to be also quite a chore to finish up before the new year. It just feels like it really got harder and harder to actually spend time and really make enough content creation. Like the general quality didn't really improve that much, but it just got harder. It's just so many other things like juggling around that YouTube really was quite a challenge to still uphold. So there is no trailer or teaser video about what's to come in 2026. I think Wargaming gave up after the poor release of the last teaser video and do not think they can do it again in a good way, which is actually quite a bad indication of Wargaming's capability, since making a teaser video is just showcasing the newest ideas. You can even give it the mark that these are first stage developments or could take more than just a year to implement, but still want to try and release it in 2026. Well then, I guess that there is even more work cut out for me than deciphering arbitrary images from a vague teaser video. Now I have to come up with new points myself. Luckily, I have a couple that I really want to be implemented. So no, I am not going to mention things like tier 10 premiums and tier 12s here. New maps. 2026 needs to have more new maps, and a lot of infrastructure is already in place to make that happen. We know that Wargaming has implemented the recon mission maps either fully or partially added up with newly designed areas. This opens up a lot of avenues to continue new map implementation. But there is once again already a few that are in actual development. These are Iron Oasis, just a quick temporary name for the Canyon Recon map that got changed with an industrial complex at the center. So calling it canyon isn't really that accurate after all anymore. The most contempt that I had with this map was that the heavy corner down left was atrociously bad to play at, but that looked significantly different. So I hope it changed in a good way. I'm not so sure about the dynamic parts, or local mechanics as they call them, the elevators and firewall. I am really curious how that plays out. Could be a very fun and interesting way to spice up maps. And I know a certain future look back video that got some extended remarks waiting for it. Then we got oil, continuing the industrial themed maps. It looks like a flipped Anikievka, but could only be called an inspiration because this map still looks very unique. For now, the left area looks too empty for my liking, but the right side could have some potential with a lot of multi-leveled areas. That's all that we know Wargaming is working on right now. Of course, you got map reworks and random events, but I don't count those as new maps. Even enlarged maps like the presumed mines can be considered a new map, but it's a gray zone, more or less. I won't be covering these ideas here as well, since I still want to make separate videos about those. But what about the other recon mission map? Out of the 12 we can write off Outpost, Airship Yard, Canyon and Oyster Bay, since they are either implemented or used for new developments. Then we can also write off Anikievka, Aquila and Klostertal, since the Russian World of Tanks has those already, and I consider Wargaming petty enough to not admit those as good maps and implement those as well because Russia bad. What we are left with are Far East, Place of Power, Volga and Avalanche. Not the best set, but at least something to work with. I think Far East has considerable potential to be developed and implemented like Canyon is right now, changing some flanks and details here and there, but keeping the overall layout as it is. I see Volga and Avalanche as an interesting project to be combined. If we replace the left side of Avalanche with the left side of Volga, as well as the middle right part for more cover towards the right side, I think we might be cooking up quite an interesting map, which we can call Aurora. And yes, having it play out at dawn or dusk with visible auroras will definitely elevate this map more in uniqueness. Then we are left with Place of Power. But that one is so bad I do not really consider it playable, unless you do something that makes a lot of the best maps so great. A ton of subflanks. Enlarge the canyon in the middle part and fill the entire lower area with a ton of boulders. You sometimes have the angles from the high grounds, but only in some places when the timing is right, creating some kind of a brawl arena of sorts. Light tanks can still crest the edges of the high grounds to check all avenues and spotting vehicles that are trying to flank around one of the many subflanks, which will be the first time that light tanks are actually spotting from behind brawling heavy and medium tanks. So those are 5 maps for now, but I think Wargaming could really benefit World of Tanks with a lot more engagement and commitment in this category and release a new map each season of the year, or around every 2 or 3 major patches. Tour of Duty 2. Create a second front for a Tour of Duty road with more different sets of missions to achieve either in platoon or as a detachment. Right now we only got the road to the Caro Compartimento 45, but the next one should be something new like the AHT-7.
with that big alpha damage. It is the way to implement such a tank destroyer with that high of an alpha damage, since the amount of players that will be able to attain it will be gradual instead of instantly, like what could happen if it were to be in an auction or assembly shop. Which, let's us be honest, will most definitely happen, knowing wargaming, but also add other parameters to achieve those missions. Add things like spotting or assistant instead of just damage, kills and or experience. And add more details with the detachment part for skirmishes instead of only win a battle. Things like get at least 25 cap points or reset at least 25 cap points, survive with at least 5 or more tanks are just a couple of examples. Just keep those missions this either or missions, because these skirmish requirements are sometimes hard to get. This is all to get more people invested in clan activities and connect with communities in which a higher chance will arrive that players will stay longer playing the game with their new peers from their clan. Crew 2.5. I will keep adding this until it is actually done. Make crew available for 3 separate non-premium tanks. And let people play more comfortably with more tanks from the tech tree that way. This does, however, make a lot of leftover or new crew obsolete, but switch them around by grinding the experience out of the old one and transfer it to the new one. Make it so like an actual military academy, where it takes quite some time to transfer the experience. It will look like your old crew member you want to retire teaches all of his or her experiences towards the new crew, with around a 90% efficiency, of course, and with a couple of real life days where you cannot play that particular crew member. Just be careful to time those things correctly for your competitive crew members. RNG rebalances. Introduce an arcade cabinet with improved RNG parameters. Not necessarily extreme ones, but more realistic ones. Remove penetration RNG altogether and improve accuracy RNG the longer someone is fully aimed. Not like the cooling mechanic of the Japanese heavies. No, make the odds of diversion within the aim circle gradually less, but never zero. So that way you never get 100% accurate after, for example, aiming a full minute at one point. These elements really should be considered testing and implemented so frustrations get lowered, since they are one of the highest frustrations in a game. So those are the points I could come up with just in a wit right now. But to add up some more content, let's take a quick look to the update 2.1.1 as well. Tier 11 rebalances. So all of the rebalances for the tier 11s are going to be buffs, which for most of them are very necessary. But are they going to make the tanks interesting enough? The object for 32, you mainly got its ability improved, where it can heat up its shells faster, the overheat charge got extended and the duration of overheating got reduced. That is pretty much nail on the head, but a very obvious one. Furthermore, its DPM and charge damage also got increased after the common test. The Leopard 120 got its gun handling and shell velocity verbesserd, making it a better fit as a sniping medium. Still doesn't reach the Leopard 1 levels of excellent dispersion values unless you aim for a while, but it seems like a decent fix. The Leopard 1 is still more a flexible tank, where the 120 is actually better at stationary sniping. Just I still like the flexibility with still good sniping capabilities. The Hearse only got slight buffs to dispersion, reload and damage. Those seems really lackluster for a tank that has been considered the worst of them all. The ASXX40T on the other hand got the most buffs of all. Dispersion, reload, velocity, reverse speed, HP... Oh wait, no, there is actually a nerf on the HP upgrade that neutralizes the HP buff. So you got more HP right out of the get-go, but you do not increase more with the upgrades as you do right now. Alongside that, some other upgrades got nerfs as well, so other elements actually got neutralized. But the most important element seems not to be touched, and that is making the turret locking animation included in the reload time. I know the reload pretty much now got buffed to neutralize this exact element, but it still means that you have scenarios that upon reload you still need to traverse your turret towards the target, that way creating downtime. Even though very small, it is quite frustrating. However, on the flip side, nerfing upgrades which got translated into buffs to the stock vehicle seems like an excellent way to balance tier 11s, especially when the difference between a non-upgraded and a fully upgraded tier 11 is quite big. The CS67 Zakal, which in my opinion didn't really need much of buffs, but I'm not complaining since it's the only tier 11 I got right now. Unless it already got decent dispersion, but it gets towards excellent levels. The accuracy, reload and reverse speed were slightly buffed, but I haven't got trouble with those elements that much. However, I only got 10 battles with it, so maybe that was only a matter of time until I encountered those hurdles. And finally, the Stridswang 10712 got its pillbox mode buffed as well as the change times between those modes. By the way, I honestly didn't know that you can get from the drive mode to the pillbox mode and back. I thought you always needed to go into the siege mode before going back either to the drive mode or the pillbox mode. Never the matter, I don't know if these changes will make the pillbox mode interesting enough to be actually used. We will see. New tier 11s. Alongside the rebalances, we got 3 additional tier 11s added. The PTZ-78 Chinese TD with a special ability individualized jet boosters, allowing it to use one side at a time for increased turning speed as well as the usual speed boost like the Chinese jet boosting heavy tanks if both are activated. Very interesting twist on an existing mechanic. Unlike the Contriver, which is pretty much the ability to double shot mechanic copy-pasted from the other high tier British heavies. But the same can be said for the STK-2 Japanese heavy with the gun cooling and hydropneumatic suspension. Again, the ability is an improved twist on the gun cooling mechanic, which is also active during movements. That makes these 2 new tanks alongside the Zakal the tier 11s with the improved mechanic from their tier 10 predecessor, which I think are the best kinds of abilities instead of picking a made up magical ability from the Adler. There are still a few more tanks which has these special mechanics that the tier 11 variants can improve on. Maybe another fun video idea. I just can ask ChatGPT for the rendering of these new hypothetical tier 11s after all, and it would actually be quite the lookalike. Finally, we got the Ares 90C, which we can talk further about in the new tech tree. The first and probably only new tech tree of 2026 will be the American autocannon medium tanks. They work a bit different from the Czech Tasak line and don't have a limited clip. No, in theory they can continue fire without any reload. The only downside is the overheat mechanic. Firing too long and your gun will be on lockdown due to the continuous fire heating the gun barrel too much. We saw this mechanic already with the overwhelming fire game mode and will be the second new gun firing mechanic implemented from that testing grounds. Not a lot can be found out right now as the stats aren't really completely updated, hopefully not for the wrong reasons, because one key element will determine a lot: damage on modules. If this damage accumulates too much with the amount of rounds per minute those can fire, we will see a critical hit epidemic. Hopefully it all gets balanced out. I mean, we don't currently see that much with the checked light tanks, but those only crit for 8 damage, which is way too small even with that accumulative output. But with the autocannons, the multi-damage is 46. In so far that tanks GG is still correct, way more likely to add up to T110 E4 levels with just 5 shells that can be fired in 1.2 seconds. So that definitely has the potential to make this line broken. For the tier 11 ability, I'm a bit conflicted. On the one hand, I hope it is the same ability but improved, but on the other hand, with an ability that turns off the overheat mechanic for a short period of time, it can also get out of hand rather fast. UI improvements, a low bar to improve on. It's nice to immediately see your mission progression in the results screen instead of checking the mission tab separately before you continue. But you still need these extra clicks if your tank got destroyed for the second time and the previous battle has already finished. So a very, very small improvement, but I'm still missing some more quick access buttons for equipment, field mods, crew members, or blueprints overview for the tech tree, which they completely removed for some fucking reason. For the foreseeable future, I will keep on playing World of Tanks, Genshin Impact, and maybe pick up World of Warships again as my regular game, trying to get all of the Dutch ships. Furthermore, I could pick up some more games that are currently in my catalog, especially since I still have the bought version of Horizon Forbidden West and Hogwarts Legacy now in my library. Next to that, the loss of my bouldering sessions until at least February means that I need to seek out other forms of physical activity, probably picking up some more walking routes and doing some more home exercises. As for connections, I hope I can see some of my travel companions from previous summer vacation by inviting them for a city trip throughout Rotterdam. That would also give me a good update from the city I studied at and see how much the different places I know got changed. Recently, I mostly have seen the view from the hospital, and one thing is for sure, a lot more skyscrapers were added over the past few years. Picking up all of my tasks and projects is going to be quite the challenge, estimated to be over 20 different tasks or projects. I really wonder how much has been taken over by colleagues and how much work pressure I would still encounter. On top of that, the head of the design department, which I had a lot of contact with, has been quitted and replaced. Not by me, thank God though. I've already enough on my hands, but my colleague with the most experience working at the headquarter location, but with no leadership experience. And the lead developer on the IT department, which I've also a lot of contact with, is soon to be on maternity leave. Luckily though, recently a new guy has joined that department with having more insight on all kinds of development matters that are closely tied with my own ideas. So my usual context will be missing somewhat, trying to establish them with my new context, which I'm going to have a lot of conversations with regarding to plan out company-wide developments. But maybe that's a blessing in disguise. I still need to tread carefully when it comes to going back to the work floor again. Not only because I still need to recover to the full extent until February, but also since I missed my performance review due to my absence, which was planned out at the end of the year. I don't know if it is still going to be planned out and if I would get an, well, at this point, deserved raise. And if not, now having the actual excuse to reduce the work week to match my current salary isn't really that far-fetched anymore. Especially since I know other hardworking colleagues are doing a bit of the same, since they got too annoyed of colleagues who aren't working at a respectable rate. The head of the office department didn't even go against one of my colleagues, blatantly telling him that with no raise, she is going to spend at least 1 hour per day just going around the office and having small talks or longer breaks. So that makes me a lot more confident and gave me the moral justification to actually do it. Because up to now I tried working 8 hours less each month, but eventually I got myself 3 hours overtime at some point on top of my regular working hours. But now it's really for the best, both mentally and physically, to take things a lot more easier. Plans for maintaining contact with my most inner social circle is going through the standard birthday parties, sports sessions, and game nights, giving a bit more attention to an even more selected few. One of my friend couple who are soon going to move to their new house with the birth of their baby boy in a very close time span, I of course want to return the favor for the help I got from them in the weeks of my kidney transplantation recovery. Hopefully I have enough time to maybe become somewhat of a honorary uncle for the kid. And of course I want to spend more time with my mother on several activities, starting off easy with, well, eating out or joining a vacation for a weekend. Something that I've already done a couple of times past year, but there were always some limitation on what she could do. So hopefully over the next year, building up more active events, maybe even picking up tennis or padel again and trying out some matches against my own kidney. That is just a too funny of a scenario not to hope for. Like I said before, getting my priorities and emotions straight is going to be the main focus of 2026. How that exactly will go, I have no idea. It mainly has to do with the other aspects I mentioned before, but I think the biggest challenge for that is to calling it quits for things that just cannot stop frustrating me, even though I might try. A lot of things might still be too strong of a trigger. I try, of course, first a set of strategies not to let the frustration take hold, but also one big element of frustration is, well, talking about it. So let's talk about it now. So yeah, in the case of my channel, the whole emotion regulation will also have an impact on that. Actually, it has an impact on what I'm doing right now. My update videos or videos where I talk about my opinions of the game, of for example World of Tanks, which are more like negative rants. So that might actually mean, even though I might struggle with it, that this is going to be the last update video. The last first video of the year with no more upcoming 13th account anniversary video in the summer. Not only is it to cut out some more negativity with those many rants about the game, which aren't really that productive. Like only the potential solutions should be called out in those matters. But also because those videos aren't that popular to begin with. If they would rack up like hundreds of views, letting me know a significant amount of interest is being displayed in those videos, I might just consider toning it down but continuing. So the time to make these long videos with all the negative inputs, I will categorize this as some crap to be cut out. I'm already doing it actually with this very video because I have already cut out 2 separate rants which will go on for quite a while. I would make this video probably over 2 hours long. Other series still continue even though they might be just as little viewed or even less viewed than my update videos. I still value those series to address some insightful, educational, or otherwise just entertainment value, which doesn't give me a slight depression afterwards. However, knowing the amount of time left for video editing will be down even more. The output will continue pretty much once every 2 weeks or even once every month, as much as there will still be a schedule for that. Then again, the big one, the World of Tanks lore video, I start with it. I work on it gradually alongside regular videos, otherwise, it's just not going to happen. So, my planning is to at least spend a couple of hours for content creation each week. Sounds like work? Well, tough luck. Otherwise, no work might be done, which I've already noticed a few times. So, within those couple of hours, I will partially spend time in which I work on those bigger projects like the World of Tanks lore video and also the map expansion program videos, which I've also not continued previous year. But also some content planned out for a new channel. So, yeah, I know. Wanting to do less YouTube, but still setting up a new channel? What? No, the only reason is because I've got myself a dashcam since last February and I've been recording and saving some interesting moments. I want to present them in an informative, educational way, a bit like my World of Tanks videos, insightful, educational, or otherwise just entertainment. Since that is a bit more personal and just not fitting for this channel, I am making a new one. Maybe some other random ideas I found fun to do might end up there as well. So yeah, that's also going to be another series of videos to uphold. What am I doing to myself? Well, hopefully those videos will explain that for themselves since they cover a topic that I found very important: road safety. And with that, we are closing up this video. So, few last points. First of all, I haven't mentioned the MBTT clan for this whole video. Well, it's mainly because there was no big things happening in there. It's just going smooth sailing pretty much with fun clan battles, great interactions and just general good vibes. It went very well. So of course it doesn't get mentioned in my only negative fucking update videos. But more seriously, I have also not mentioned anything because there isn't really that much clear to talk about. We haven't done a meeting in a while. Well, actually, the next meeting is going to be in a couple of days. However, that is too short of a time frame to add on towards the, well, editing process for this video. So I will leave it at that. There are going to be some major points to be discussed. It's going to be a long meeting. Well, that is sure to be expected if you have not done such a thing for a very long time. Now, another thing which I've spoken a bit about are those additional rants I first wrote down, which I will not include in this very video, but I will edit it in separate ones, just having the standard a legend logo with flames under it, just not a lot of editing, just purely the audio to put somewhere. But I'm going to put those videos on private. Unless you might be interested in what I have to say about, well, wargaming's mentality towards World of Tanks. Throughout topics I haven't really talked that much about. And also a bit of politics, because yeah, politics is now also going to be a big thing. And the general negativity that came out of that, which, well, led me towards this whole mentality of controlled emotions and such. So if you might be interested in that, let me know in the comments or somewhere else, and I will temporarily put those videos on public. I say temporarily as well because later on, maybe later on this year, I will privatize all of my update videos because I don't really feel it necessary to be, well, that common towards everyone to just see. I myself will look back on them several times. I have already done that up till now, and it is very handy to see what my thoughts and opinions were of 1 year ago, 2 years ago. But I feel those opinions are, well, more in check in if I keep them to myself, just not oversharing anything anymore that much. And that is pretty much to, well, limit the emotional output in that case. And that is also some bit of closing advice to you to go throughout a better life, because a lot of things, a lot of negative things are happening, of course. A lot of negative things are highlighted, so it all seems pretty doom and gloom. But don't forget about the positive stuff. I think personally, our lives in the modern era are dominated by these negative thoughts. So you can just put more effort to ignore them, ignore some additional negative thoughts, and seek out more positive thoughts. I mean, you always create a balance in some sort, because negative thoughts and negative things will just appear out of nowhere because they're so prevalent in today's society. But really focusing on the positive sides, it's the main thing I think will keep yourself sane, or just a bit more happy, or not gloomy all of the time. So hopefully you, the viewers, are listening. By the way, thanks for viewing or listening towards this whole long ass video once again. And hopefully this advice may apply to you as well, and you can do something with it. I don't know. I just row my own flow, so to say. And with that, that's the end of this video. No outro, a whole new thing. I'm going to do less. I'm really toning down the effort I'm making these videos in video editing, so to say. So with that, I will still see you next time. Laters.